Tiffany Henyard, former mayor of Dalton, has recently made public claims about being broke after hitting rock bottom, even admitting to relying on regular people for money to maintain the extravagant lifestyle she once enjoyed. Her shift from spending public funds on lavish trips and $1 million security team to begging for handouts marks a stark reversal, and the consequences of her financial mismanagement are only beginning to unfold during her tenure as mayor. Tiffany Henyard lived like royalty, spending public money on luxury vacations, expensive security, and other lavish expenditures. In addition to spending taxpayer dollars on high-end trips, she reportedly borrowed millions of dollars, using the city's infrastructure as collateral. Henyard publicly admitted that she had a blank check from the city and wasn't afraid to use it, essentially turning the city's funds into her personal piggy bank. One of the most outrageous examples of her financial excess was her decision to spend nearly $1 million on a welcome sign for Dalton. While the town was facing increasing financial difficulty, Henyard spent taxpayer money on vanity projects like the welcome sign and a banner of herself that cost $119,000. The people of Dalton were struggling to make ends meet, yet Henyard's actions painted a picture of extreme irresponsibility. Her spending went beyond these projects. She also enjoyed the luxury of a security detail that cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. Some officers were reportedly making nearly $133,000 in overtime, more than many people in Dalton earned in several years. But Tiffany Henyard's financial troubles didn't end with public funds being misused. Reports also revealed that Henyard borrowed millions of dollars and used city assets as collateral. The extent of her spending and borrowing began to catch up with her when it became clear that the city could not meet its financial obligations. Police cars were at risk of being repossessed, and essential services like fire services were being neglected. The fire department had not had a contract in 5 years, while Henyard continued to fund her extravagant lifestyle in addition to her poor management of the city's finances. Henyard became embroiled in a Section 8 housing scandal. Section 8 is a program designed to help low-income individuals and families find affordable housing, but Henyard allegedly used the program for personal gain. She reportedly owned properties that were in terrible condition, full of mold, water damage, and other issues, and continued to collect Section 8 payments, despite the properties being deemed uninhabitable. As of November 2019, the property was considered uninhabitable. Yet Henyard continued to cash in the checks. The situation worsened when it was revealed that Tiffany Henyard neglected to make necessary repairs to property she owned, and inspections were ignored. Despite the deplorable conditions, Henyard kept cashing Section 8 checks and allowed the properties to deteriorate. This gross negligence led to further claims of corruption, as Henyard misused government funds meant for those in need. While low-income tenants lived in moldy, damaged apartments, Henyard enjoyed a life of luxury funded by taxpayers. The revelations surrounding her financial mismanagement didn't stop at one scandal. As mayor, Tiffany Henyard was not only responsible for misusing public funds, but also for fostering a culture of corruption. This became evident when the FBI began investigating her activities. The agency launched a full-scale investigation into her personal financial transactions and the town's finances, including the misuse of public funds. Tiffany Henyard, once the mayor of Dalton, quickly became the center of an investigation that would expose the full extent of her financial mismanagement. The FBI subpoenaed records from both Tiffany's personal accounts and the town's finances. Their investigation revealed that Henyard was using taxpayer money for personal benefits, including funding a lavish security detail, extravagant vacations, and other personal expenses. The lavish lifestyle that Henyard had enjoyed as mayor was funded by money that should have gone toward the well-being of Dalton residents. As the investigation deepened, it became apparent that Henyard's actions were far more serious than previously thought. Adding fuel to the fire, former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was reportedly brought in to oversee the investigation, sending a strong message about the seriousness of the case. The FBI's use of electronic surveillance indicated that they were monitoring Henyard closely, collecting information from various sources, including local businesses and former employees who had knowledge of Henyard's alleged wrongdoings. As the investigation continued, Tiffany's reputation began to crumble. The people of Dalton, who had once trusted her to lead them, were now calling for answers. They were angry about the misuse of public funds and the lack of accountability that had allowed Henyard to spend taxpayers' money with such disregard. The town had been left in financial ruin, with vital services underfunded and government obligations unmet at this point. Tiffany Henyard's public behavior became even more erratic. Instead of facing the mounting pressure and addressing the allegations, Henyard chose to vanish. She stopped attending public meetings and avoided making appearances, including missing more than 25 board meetings. It was as if she thought she could escape the consequences by hiding away, but her absence only fueled public frustration. In an attempt to deflect blame, Henyard began accusing her former chief, Keith Freeman, of poor financial decisions, as though she had nothing to do with the financial disaster unfolding around her. This shift in blame only served to further alienate her from the people of Dalton, who were beginning to realize that they had been misled by someone they had trusted to manage the town's finances, as Henyard continued to hide from the public eye. The FBI's investigation pressed on. The evidence against her grew, and the legal consequences of her actions seemed inevitable. As more interviews were conducted with local business owners and former employees, it became clear that Henyard's misconduct extended far beyond a few isolated incidents. The FBI was determined to expose the full scope of her corruption. While Tiffany may have hoped to avoid the consequences by disappearing, her problems only grew more significant as the investigation continued. The people of Dalton had lost faith in her leadership, and the town was in a state of disarray. The FBI, now actively monitoring Henyard, was determined to uncover all the financial mismanagement and fraud she had been involved in during her time as mayor. The investigation revealed more than just financial mismanagement. Tiffany Henyard had allegedly been involved in multiple acts of fraud, misusing Section 8 housing funds and taking advantage of government programs meant for the most vulnerable members of society. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Henyard continued to act as though nothing was wrong, further isolated herself from the very people she was supposed to serve. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Henyard's actions would not go unpunished. The FBI's efforts to uncover the full extent of her corruption signaled that legal action was on the horizon. It was only a matter of time before Tiffany Henyard's house of cards would collapse, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions. The damage she had done to Dalton was undeniable, and it was clear that her time as mayor was over. Tiffany Henyard's story is one of greed, neglect, and financial recklessness. What started as a position of public service quickly became an opportunity for personal gain. Now, as the FBI closes in on her, Henyard's once thriving political career has been overshadowed by the weight of her own misdeeds. As the people of Dalton wait for justice, the fallout from Henyard's actions is only beginning to be fully understood. Her legacy as mayor will be forever marked by corruption, financial mismanagement, and a complete disregard for communities she was supposed to serve. Tiffany Henyard, the former mayor of Dalton, is now in the headlines for all the wrong reasons, and it's safe to say that her high-rolling lifestyle is catching up with her fast. Word on the street is that she's been selling off her personal items like there's no tomorrow, scraping together pennies just to keep the lights on. But while Tiffany seems to be sinking deeper into financial turmoil, the town of Dalton is falling apart at an even faster rate. With millions of dollars in debt and a mayor nowhere to be found at Village Board of Dalton, fed up with Tiffany's disappearing act, finally appointed a temporary mayor, Jason House, to take over in the short term. That's right. Dalton had to bring in a substitute because the real mayor couldn't be bothered to show up. Tiffany had long ago checked out of her responsibilities. While the town was drowning under debt caused by her reckless spending, Dalton's situation was dire. And while Tiffany was hiding out and avoiding the fallout from her actions, the residents of the town were left to wonder how they ended up with a mayor who was more interested in evading responsibility than addressing the issues at hand. It's almost as if they elected a magician whose last trick was to disappear right when they needed her most. Managing a town isn't a game. It's not about avoiding your problems. It's about facing them head-on. And Tiffany seemed to forget that while Dalton was left without leadership, Tiffany was nowhere to be found, playing a never-ending game of Where's Waldo with her supporters. She was the last person anyone expected to step up and take charge of the town's issues. As things continued to spiral out of control, Tiffany acted as though managing Dalton was somehow beneath her. Choosing to flee rather than deal with the mess she had created. Tiffany's disappearance was not only a sign of neglect, but it also reflected her refusal to take accountability for her actions. The more she hid from the public eye, the more people started to question her motives. Was she truly this irresponsible? Had she completely forgotten her duty to the people of Dalton? The fact that she abandoned them at their most vulnerable hour made it clear that she was no longer fit to serve as mayor. But Tiffany's antics didn't end with her vanishing act. She was also busy trying to shift the blame onto her former chief of staff, Keith Freeman. According to reports, she started to claim that Freeman was responsible for the financial mismanagement that led to her downfall. It was a classic case of not my fault, as she tried to convince everyone that she was simply a puppet with Freeman pulling the strings. The reality, however, was that Tiffany ruled Dalton with an iron fist, and the idea that Freeman was making all the decisions was laughable. Tiffany's blame game strategy extended beyond Freeman. There were reports that she had fired employees for refusing to keep records hidden from the public, and that she had forced staff to go along with questionable schemes. One former HR manager claimed that she had been let go because she refused to follow orders to hide information. Meanwhile, other employees were reportedly pushed out when they declined to take part in shady activities. Tiffany seemed to be running the town like it was her personal fiefdom, punishing anyone who didn't comply with her demands. But the most shocking claims came from business owners who reported being harassed by the police for not supporting Tiffany. One local businessman, Lawrence Gardner, said that after refusing to participate in one of Tiffany's schemes, his business license was canceled and he was subjected to police harassment. It became clear that Tiffany wasn't just mismanaging funds. She was also using her power to intimidate and punish anyone who stood in her way. The financial problems in Dalton didn't just stem from reckless spending. They were exacerbated by Tiffany's borrowing habits. It was reported that she used city infrastructure as collateral to borrow millions of dollars, which is not only absurd but also illegal. City property isn't hers to use as leverage for personal loans. Yet Tiffany seemed to think that the rules didn't apply to her. Now, creditors are coming after the town in an attempt to recover the money they loaned to Tiffany. Some are even looking to take possession of city property to settle the debts. The FBI has now stepped in, investigating the situation and uncovering the full extent of Tiffany's financial mismanagement. Keith Freeman, who Tiffany tried to throw under the bus, is reportedly cooperating with the authorities and providing valuable information. Meanwhile, Tiffany is reportedly still living in luxury, continuing her attempts to hide from the truth. To make matters worse, Tiffany has now resorted to pleading for money online. Yes, you heard that right. Despite spending public funds like confetti during her time as mayor, she is now asking regular people to open their wallets and donate to her cause. This is the same woman who blew millions on fancy trips, high-end security, and unnecessary vanity projects. Yet now she's asking for handouts. The irony is almost too much to bear. Tiffany's GoFundMe page has left many people shaking their heads in disbelief. How did she go from living like a Kardashian to begging for cash from ordinary people? Wasn't she the one with a blank check from the city? Now she's acting like she's destitute, pleading for money to cover the cost of her $119,000 welcome banners and trips to Vegas. The public is not impressed, and many are mocking her for her audacity. How could she expect people to support her after everything she's done? Some are questioning whether this GoFundMe is genuine or just another one of Tiffany's schemes. Is she truly broke? Or is this just a way for her to secure funds before she disappears again? Given her track record of deception, many are skeptical that this is anything more than a last-ditch effort to get money and flee before the authorities can catch up with her, while Tiffany's supporters may be clinging to the hope that she can turn things around. Most people are starting to see through her ruse. After all, she went from living a life of luxury to scraping by online, and it doesn't make sense. People are starting to wonder whether Tiffany is just trying to pay off her debts, or if this is part of a larger plot to con more people out of their hard-earned money. Dalton's residents, on the other hand, are struggling to make sense of what's happening. The police department's cars are at risk of being repossessed, and the fire department hasn't had a contract in years. Despite all the chaos she has caused, Tiffany seems to think she can just ask for a makeover and everything will be fine. But the truth is, she's left Dalton in a financial mess that will take years to fix. Tiffany's creditors are chasing her down, and the people of Dalton are still dealing with the fallout from her rule. While she's out here raising money online, the town is crumbling under the weight of her mismanagement. Some of Tiffany's critics believe she's trying to play the victim and get sympathy money, hoping that people will forget about her disastrous time as mayor. But the residents of Dalton aren't going to let her off the hook so easily. They've been left with the mess she created, and they're not going to let her disappear without facing the consequences. The most absurd part of all this is that, despite everything she's done, Tiffany has managed to raise about $155,000 through her GoFundMe. It's hard to understand how she's pulling this off, but it's clear that she has a way of convincing people to give her money. Some believe she's using her position as a black woman to manipulate people into feeling sorry for her, but the truth is that she doesn't deserve any sympathy. She has taken millions from the town and wasted it on herself, and now she's asking for more. Tiffany Henyard's fall from grace has been nothing short of dramatic. Once living a life of luxury, she is now scrambling to stay afloat, begging for money online while the town she used to lead continues to suffer. The people of Dalton aren't buying her story, and they're not going to let her get away with it. It's time for Tiffany to face the consequences of her actions, and it's clear that she's not going to escape unscathed. The town of Dalton deserves better, and Tiffany's time as mayor has come to an end. Thanks for watching Celeb News.